All right, we're live. Hey everyone, it's me and Isaac. Yeah, and Isaac, you want to introduce yourself? Kick it off at the end.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm a software engineer, and we've been working in an app that includes authentication using a NextJS library. So we're going to show you how it works.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are testing out a whole new look today, as you can see. So we were able to get a nice little studio in my apartment complex. So Isaac was able to come down here and hang out while we were able to do this. Let me know if the audio is not working okay. We have a nice mic set up right over here, as you can see. So I think we should be good. Let me know otherwise. But we also have a GoPro running, so we're hoping that won't be too delayed. But let me know otherwise. We're going to be going through Next authentication, then the ability to kind of make sure that someone has access and we're able to verify them in a Firebase store. And then we are showing kind of how we can query all these individuals in using StepSend's directive at Materializer to be able to show all the attendees and events associated with an owner that is now logged in to a dashboard using NextAuth. And that's a gross oversimplification, but I will hop over now and share my screen to our little diagram of it. So let me share that, and we should be able to see it now. Isaac, you want to give a little demo?
So the flow is pretty simple. The user tried to access our web app. We try to see if they have session with the library, and if no, we send them to Google provider to sign in. So that way we don't need to remember a new password or try to ask the user for a new password. So the user goes to Google, sign in, success. Okay, now I go into our database and check if the person or the user exists, check their profile, and if everything goes okay, so I'll give them the result he's asking for. In this case, it's the dashboard.
Dashboard. And if no, I guess the only thing we could have included is if no, we are going to send them.
User is not allowed to be here.
Yeah, so we then just send them, instead of sending them to the dashboard user in our DB, kind of break it into two right here is the only edit we could have made in that dashboard, and then not authenticated page, yes, no. And then at that point, we're kind of making it a flow of, if the individual doesn't have access and we're checking that they shouldn't have access, they're going to have to reach out to us and we can create them in the Firebase store, right? And we'll show how we do that. Awesome. So we'll get back over, and now we're going to go and dive into the code. And getting into the first thing, we want to be able to kind of check out NextAuth. And actually, I'll just give a little intro as to what NextAuth is. It's a really easy way of being able to use authentication in Next.js. We really liked the flow and how it worked. Because it's really easy on being able to pull in a provider, as you can see there. So we are going to be using the Google provider in this one. Mm-hmm. And then we kind of just followed the little tutorials here, and we built out kind of on the core app, the session that we wanted to be able to bring in, and just being able to log that throughout the entire application's process to see if someone has a session that's being used throughout the application, and then giving them what they want if they do have a session, and if they don't. But we're also adding this as a layer to checking if they are actually an owner.
2 layers of security.
Yeah. So NextAuth is kind of layer one, right? And then the second layer of security is our Firebase database that's checking it out. So NextAuth here, user authenticated for a session with Google Auth. Then we move over into the second authentication process of making sure we actually have them in our database. So now we'll get over into that and show how we put it in our code. So first one, NextAuth page. We have this located in
we
API.
We need to declare the providers we are going to use. In this case, we are going to use Google. We need to get that, like the client ID keys and the secret key. You can get them going to the Google Developer Console, and then credentials. There is a lot of tutorials that show you how to do that. It's very easy. So you go to credentials, out client IDs, and then you can, what is it for a web application, and then they give you those 2 keys.
Yep.
So after we set it up into local and file, because it has to be it can be exposed into the client side, and when we put it in there, we are going to use them into the NextJS previous file. Yeah.
Pull those in right there.
Correct. Okay. And we need to set up also like this. If we are going to use the JWT, we need to get the tiny private key. For this we can use a library called Node Hosted Tools.
What was it called?
Node Hosted Tools.
Node hosted tools. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll share that
So Node Hosted Tools. Yes. No, I mean, no, no, JOSE.
JOSE?
Yeah,
JOSE hosted tools. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
that one.
So we use that one in order to create the JWT token?
Correct.
Okay. Got it. And then we bounce over.
So, okay,
And then that creates it. And then we generated that and just put it in the ENV sample, right?
correct.
Okay. Awesome.
So after we have everything in that file, we can wrap our app into the custom file that uses NextJS to render all of our pages. We use the provider from our NextJS client, and we give them the session. So if the component has the parameter out,
Right here, right?
Yeah.
Go back over here.
Yeah, correct.
Cool.
So go down.
Go down.
Okay. So provider is giving all of the component sessions that we have. So if we get the parameter out, we're going to check for the session. If no, we are going to, it's a public component, so it doesn't require authentication.
Got it. So it's just wrapping the auth right here, this actual variable here, if we have auth that exists.
Correct.
As a variable that's coming in from auth right here, from the components auth, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then components
And you
auth.
can show also the out component.
Auth component,
Yeah,
right here.
correct. That has all the logic for if we have a session. If we don't have a session, go to login. If we have a user, go down. Yeah, correct. And pretty much that's it.
Got it. Okay, cool. So auth brings in session coming in from use session here. Next auth client has user, is checking if there is a user that exists, has the router. If it's loading, if it's not loading, and if it does not have a user,
Go to
login. If it's loading and has user, then go loading, say that it's there, and then pretty much once it's not loading, then we bring them and actually bring them to the login page. So without further ado, let's bring them to the login page, right? So what we did was we just pulled this down. So popping over here, you have Next Auth dashboard, right? So if you want to follow along, copy this. And then what you can do is you can pull that down, run yarn install, and then you have the env sample, copy that, do exactly what you need to do there. And then there is the next config, and we already filled that out. You need to fill that out with all of your Firebase authentications in order to be able to get a Firebase store. We'll just kind of show you. And over here, we have in our Firebase, I need to sign in again because I think I logged out for the demo, but I will do that. But in here, as you can see, we have event, owner, person, and then restaurants is from a different example that we have. But as you can see in owner, we're not going to have me right here, the Google account, in there. So there's no owner Sam at Stepson. So in this application, we're going to deny him at first. We're going to say, no, you can't get into this. You're not going to be able to see what you want to see because we don't have you as an owner in our database. So you don't have the rights to be able to see events in here. We need to be able to provide that and add you to our Firebase database. That's this layer of security right here. So when we get to that, we'll get to it. But npm run dev, and I'll check real quick. Might see the stream of death. Okay, cool. Wyatt I can't wait to find out. Okay, awesome. No questions, guys. Sorry that I have to do it this way. That's how we're demoing. It's so awesome. Cool. So I think we have it running, compiled. So let's head over, localhost, and then we have the redirect, right, to login. That's what we should see first. Loading. No, you need to log in. So that's the first route that we were just set up. Let's sign in. Awesome. And this is why I wasn't able to get in Firebase, because I signed myself out so that we can do this. I'm going to sign in. Make sure I do this right. Who else could do it wrong? There we go. Okay, awesome. Went to dashboard. So clearly we have no dashboard set up, 404 page. And what we're going to do is we're going to build the dashboard to say if the user does not exist and we don't find them in the database, as we're going to run a query against StepSend to check that out, StepSend GraphQL endpoint, which we'll be doing next, then we're going to redirect them to unauthorized page. They aren't going to be able to have access. So we'll bounce back over, and now we'll kind of just show in StepSend what will be going on there when we want to be able to run that query. So if we go into here, and I already have it all laid out, we have a lot of extra stuff here because we have more of an app than just this, right? We were showing from last week that we were building on a little bit more, but what we really need to check out is Firebase owner by email, right? So what we're going to be checking is if there is an owner in the database associated as email. And I have an ngrok running, as I did last time, and I talked about that we just built in our API over here. And I guess I should change this right here. Sorry about that, to owner. And so come up here, pages API, you're going to be able to see we have owner, and we're checking in here if there's an actual email that's going to be associated with an individual. And I think if we bounce in, let me see if we can find this in here somewhere. But we focused a lot on REST last time, but really what we're going to be showing is Firebase owner by email. And if we go into here, we're going to be able to see that we're going to run this query here, get owner, and we're going to check for email to make sure that that person is actually in our database. And if they aren't, then we're going to redirect them to the auth site because we aren't going to authorize that and say you're not authorized. We didn't find you in our database. So we're running the query there, and you can see that we generated an endpoint here. StepSend start. So we have that running along this Firebase one here. And really what we're going to be focusing on is checking here against this endpoint. And then if the person does exist, we're actually writing out materializers. I have Brave opening that. But if we have events at materializer right here, you'll be able to see that we're going to be pulling in that materializer here for events for a person. And then you can see we have event pulling in here, and we have a lot of different materializers for an owner. And then you'll see that because event is also pulling in attendees by attendees IDs that we're all flowing in the same fashion, we'll be able to jump in here and see that we'll be able to get Firebase owner by email, events, and then attendees. And then that's what they'll be able to see all throughout their dashboard. So they'll be able to see that when we pull that in. So now that we have this endpoint there, we'll pop back over and create our dashboard. And I'm just going to copy this file from over here. So beg my swipes, save some time, copy, and we'll be able to copy that in. Paste. Awesome. Dashboard. So now we have the dashboard in there. And I think if we just do a refresh right here, we'll see if we get a redirect. Logged in, unauthorized or not authorized. So as we saw what just happened there, now we were able to get redirected to not authorized. So we'll go through dashboard real quick and kind of talk about what we did here. We added some styling. I can throw that to the bottom so it's a little bit cleaner. But what we're essentially doing is we're pulling an owner, and we'll get that from server side, and we have our session, right? Yeah. So if there's a session coming from get auth, then return
render
the page, right? But else push to login. So if there's no session at all, someone directly tries to come to this, they'll get redirected to login, and that happens client side. But what we did server side, that's pretty cool, is we do the same thing of being able to pull in the get session, and we wait for that. And then we actually have a session checking and pulling in that email that we send over to get owner that we were talking about earlier. So now it comes over to get owner, export, that function, email's pulling in. So if we wanted to console log that, it'll pull up as we just go along. We'll be able to see that the owner is going to be directly associated with the session. So when I logged in through Google, Google sends over an email and says, yeah, that person let you sign in. Well, now we're being able to check that out here and saying, okay, well, does that email that just signed in, Sam@StepSend, actually exist in our database? I believe if I refresh this over here, yeah. So as we can see here, owner, not in here. We just have Isaac in here right now. So we don't have me. So that's why we get unauthorized, because it checks and it sees, okay, there's no owner here by the name Sam@StepSend. So we are not going to return data. We're going to return an error. And then we come over to, back over to our dashboard, and it says, if there's no owner name, which we just used as an example in this one, redirected to not authorized. So that's what just happened right there. And I think I got everything so far, right? Yeah. Then we return owner. Oh, and then owner is carried back up here. That's going to be pulled into the dashboard.
Show the not authorized page.
Yeah.
You don't have it.
Since we don't have not authorized, so now we need to go get that page, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you built up the not authorized page. You want to talk a little bit about that one and what we kind of real simple here, talk about the sign out action.
Yeah, actually, we go to the database to check if the user exists or not. And if it doesn't exist, so we show them this page. We do a redirect to this page.
Got it. And when they sign out, they go back to the home page.
Because they have a session, but he's not allowed to be there. That's why.
Got it. So this kind of, we just use this one as the default to send everyone here whenever they aren't in our database, not when they don't have a session, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So if they have a session, they won't be sent here. Or if they have a session, they could be sent here, but if they don't exist in our database, they're going to be sent here. They have to be in the database to see their dashboard. So it's either, like we said earlier in that demo, or in that sample, I keep swiping left. I can't really be able to, because it flipped on me. Here, so user in our database, either dashboard or not authenticated. So popping them back over here, not authorized. Awesome. So now not authorized, this beautiful UI that Isaac built out.
Super elaborated.
Yeah. Yes. We aren't here for the functionality or the backends. So sign out, right? So we'll sign myself out. And then what should happen is it takes us to login, because the homepage wants you to log in. So essentially went not authorized, homepage, back to login, because you need to log in.
Try to go to, did that?
Try to go here. Just keep saying no.
Go to login.
Yeah, you can't see anything. Okay, so now the next step is making me, right? So as we can see from the API owner right here, we'll be able to post. So that's coming from our API folder. This is essentially localhost 3000 that we have going on. Email, Sam@StepSend, event IDs, send it. And then we created me. So we'll show that in Firebase, and then we'll ask questions right here. So yes. So throw your questions out now. We're about to pop over. We're just showing that an owner is now associated in here. And we're showing that Sam@StepSend, we wanted to say he's allowed to see this event by ID. And this is a name, this is ID. So we pop over to events and we look in here. We'll be able to see that's the same one. So the ID associated with that event. And then we'll then be able to query San Jose and Silicon Valley, the Silicon Valley Hackathon, the name of it, into the dashboard. And then we'll be able to do the same exact thing in the same process with attendee IDs and see them here. And then we'll be able to query in John Doe, who's attended that event right there associated with that ID. And as you can see there, he's attended this one. So that kind of going back over here, sorry, I keep swiping the wrong way. What did I do here? Oh, I cancel logged. Okay, we'll save that. So as you can see here, that's that query going to that StepSend endpoint, events, attendees. And when you go into StepSend specifically, that is just a materializer that's pulling in person list by ID. And that's kind of, I would watch the episode from last week on how we go into and dive into a little more detail on actually pulling this query in by having a string array, and it can take that string array by being able to auto explode the person list endpoint. So it would be essentially ID equals 1 and ID equals 2, and gives you an array of all the individual people that are now going to be queried into this attendees list for that individual event. So that's how we did that there. Watch the first episode last week in more detail on kind of how we use that auto explode feature to be able to materialize all three of these. But now I think since I'm created, I should be authorized and see my dashboard. So heading back over, swiping the wrong way. I'm going to ask questions right here. No, everyone's good. So I'm going to pop back over, and I'm going to now sign in. And if all goes good, because I've already done the auth process, I'm in my dashboard. Super easy.
Hey.
Took no time at all. And this is essentially you being able to have access now to your data coming in here. So Samuel Garrett Hill, my username that we were able to get from our session. Yeah, Google. And we have a default set in there to where it's like an owner name from Firebase. And then if not, it'll actually grab the session name and email that Google sends over. So there's always a backup in case Firebase ever doesn't give us what we want. We can see that Silicon Valley Hackathon was associated. The amount of attendees is 1. And then the attendee here, John Doe, located at 123 Miami Ave. And I guess we want to go into the code a little bit there, the dashboard. No live coding today, just talk. We go into here, we can see that if there's a session, right? So we have this session existing. We're going to be able to have a count here. And I created a little component just to kind of show we're passing owner. And then we have a lower part, session username, session user image. And then we have owner name, give the owner's name. If not, we'll provide that session one. And then owner email, provide the owner email. And then there's a sign out option to where it just redirects you back there and then eventually log you to the login page. And I think that's about it. I mean, we can show how it kind of logs a little bit more data throughout it, but the coolest thing was then we just mapped out the events here, and the events were able to come in, and we just had one. So this is the Silicon Valley one that was there. And then we totaled up the attendee count, and I just created a little variable here above that gets all of the attendee IDs and just counts them up. And then if you kind of scroll a bit farther down, we can see that we have, where did I have it? Attendees here. We just have one more. First event, attendees, and then we're just kind of listing them out. Attendee name, and attendee address, and the email associated. And then just a little dummy image to show the person right here. That's about it. Any other thoughts, Isaac? I kind of hammered away at the end there. You took it early, and then I finished late. Oh, you have the, so you kind of want to talk about what's going on here?
Yeah, about the logic that uses with the app.js. It's the wrapper for all pages. So if you have like the parameter out in the page, you can show the page.
Yeah, so if I pop back over here, we're in the app.js. So the literal parameter right here, dot auth.
Dot auth.
Right.
It's going to ask you to log in. Otherwise, it's going to be a public resource. Mm-hmm. So we can go to dashboard and show at the
dashboard. Got it. Go where in the code?
In the end.
At the end?
At the end. Yeah, and that's it.
It just needs the parameter on the page.
Yeah, super easy.
And then it essentially, when we pass in .auth, what is it providing? What does .auth provide to this page? Or did it?
Go back to the
so exactly. Component .auth
parameter, and then renders come out according to the parameter.
Got it. So if it has .auth at the end of the component, it's saying this has to go along with our authentication process. So it's essentially separating pages
public resources or private resources.
Now that's really clear on how you built that up. That's really cool. And that's NextAuth, just being able to separate public and private just by a variable declared at the end of the component. That's really neat. I definitely contributed to this, but you definitely did that part. So that was really cool to see that. So then component is being pulled in, and component is just, how is component pulled in right here? So when you have the auth and component is coming in, how is that just a standard in Next or React? So if you just name something component in app, it's going to look for that individual component page that's declared. Okay, got it. So like a class component would be the same exact thing. You can still pull it in that way. Got it. Page props, you have session. And then really what's going on here, I think this is just styling. So that has nothing to do with it. And then we have the state provider, but that was from the example we had last week where the state's being passed through. And then not authorized, we come into here, sign out and sign in, that we didn't have to build out, right? That was essentially provided by NextAuth. So yeah, so right there, sign out is provided to them. So when that function happens, they handle all of that on that side and just essentially remove your token from the session.
And then send you to the starting page, localhost. You can set whatever you want in the callback URL.
Got it. And then I think if we were to try to access the homepage, we can do it now because we're logged in. So yeah, there we go. So that's our little demo from last week to where we have the check-ins, which we can build out the check-in page, but now they're able to access this page because they had access to it. So I think if we were to check there, index should have .auth at the end, right? It was checking for that. So we go to index.auth, right? Okay, so if we were to literally remove this little piece right here, anyone would be able to see the home page at that point. Okay, got it. And then dashboard is just that long one, but really the coolest thing about that was us being able to do server side on this. So when we have that session coming in and we check the session user email against the StepSend endpoint and we ping that for the Git owner and it comes back and says, yeah, we do have that data, you're able to retrieve that. We pop back over and we're able to say, yeah, we actually want to return that, or we can actually redirect to the destination of not authorized. And I think that's just a super cool feature that we're able to get a session on server side and keep it completely server side and then provide all the data on a page of the dashboard right here. Without having to do anything other than checking if there's a session going on and if they actually are valid in our database. So that's pretty cool.
Cool.
Anything else?
Nope.
No?
Where else?
Yeah, I think that was it. If it's supposed to be easy, it'll go quick, right? And if it was set up well. So I'm gonna pop into here and then stop sharing this screen. And I'm gonna ask, does anyone have any other questions? We can see all the questions up on the board right there. So I don't think so. I can't wait to find out what the auth after my current auth is gonna be, because that's the next auth. Get it? Do you get it? That's really funny, Anthony. It's the sequential authentication process in the next app. And yeah, we were able to provide a way of doing that with Firebase, which I thought was really neat, and being able to create those REST endpoints. And what only took us under 30 minutes to kind of exemplify that. And we could have gone through the code step by step. If there was any questions on details of code, could have written it out that way. But as I said earlier, like if you want to check it out, you can pull that down right here and then just sign up for a StepSend account and then be able to, I think you just go to StepSend sign up. You can sign up for an account, create that endpoint, and then be able to provide that in your env file that is over here, and then punch it into your env sample right here. As you can see, just punch in those two variables along with your Google account that you create and generate that JWT signing token and run it locally, and you should get it built. No other questions? No other sayings? I think we'll wrap it up.
No.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. No problem.